Okay, so we are live now. Welcome everyone, and Fede, you can take it away. Thanks everyone for joining.
Well, thank you everybody. What a day and what an event. One after the other is just simply fantastic. So it's a bit of a special moment right now because it's the closing keynote of a magnificent event. And if that's possible, we're actually going higher and higher and higher and higher. And we are in the stratosphere. Now, I have the honor, the pleasure to introduce Nick Tran to be our next speaker. Now, Nick Tran, we're talking about somebody that started at Taco Bell, then Samsung, then Hulu, then responsible globally for marketing at TikTok. And you might think that that is the coolest stuff that he has done in his life. Well, let me prove you wrong. It's actually not the coolest thing that he's wrong, because he's actually co-producer in Genius, which I'm sure you all know what it is the Kanye West documentary that's on Netflix right now, and he's the co-producer of that. So please shower him with questions and just sit back, enjoy the conversation, because you are in the presence of someone that can create connections between people and notions and make them relevant and meaningful to the audiences that he is working with and for. And so I know it's going to be great fun. Nick, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Fed. And thank you for having me here. It's always an honor to speak to students and folks from prestigious universities like NYU. So thank you again. I think everyone can, attest to the fact that the last couple of years have been really hard. And if you think about what we've all been kind of going through, it's been fascinating to see so much change, and yet so much has stayed the same. For me personally, I started at TikTok during the pandemic. So over the last few years, I've never stepped foot into a physical office. I haven't met 90% of the people that I work with on a regular basis. And going through this last 2-year time frame, we've done everything from win Marketers of the Year to having me listed as Forbes's top 5 most influential CMOs, only to have it all kind of come crashing early this year, where I was seemingly fired for innovating too hard at TikTok, which I didn't think was possible, but turns out it is. So what I wanted to actually start with is the beginning of my journey, how I came into marketing and what led to the different moments in my career that ultimately got me fired in my mind, the most positive way possible. So I began my career about 11 years ago, as I mentioned, at Taco Bell. And if you remember 11 years ago, there was no Snapchat. Facebook was just starting to become a thing, and people weren't really clear about the impact of social media on their businesses. And I was able to actually join Taco Bell the day that the biggest crisis within the company's history happened. And it happened to be this beef lawsuit where somebody actually sued Taco Bell for not using real beef. And even though that was completely untrue, they absolutely 100% use real beef, the perception of the brand was so poor that people didn't read the actual stories. They just saw the headline that they were sued for this thing, and it immediately erased previous years worth of profits. And in that moment, as like an intern that was just starting, I recognized the power of brand and the power of perception. And the most fascinating thing as we were taking the next few months to recover was also the impact that social media could have to influence the perception of a brand, especially to a younger audience. So I started my career in social media and was working on Taco Bell, where we created a lot of different stunts and a lot of different ways of working. And I remember distinctly the CMO at the time asked me, "What do you think your job is?" And I was very tactical with my answer. I said, "Oh, my job is to manage the social community. It is to inspire, the audience to like the brand more and to basically like tweet out from all the channels and post on all the channels." And he kind of stopped me right there. He said, no, that's not your job. Your job is to make us cool and just don't get us sued." And that's kind of become the guiding light for my entire career, where my job has been to make brands cool, which essentially means make them culturally relevant and avoid crossing any line, whether it's getting sued or doing something that's so egregious that it's actually negative to the brand. So having that sort of North Star for me in my career has been an amazing focal point on what I want to do in marketing. And the other thread that's been throughout my career that's almost like a big, thing that I've been known to be able to be part of is, for whatever reason, every time I go to a new company, there's always a big crisis. So as I mentioned, I started at Taco Bell, big crisis, but we navigated through that and became one of the hot brands during that era, especially in the fast food space. And then somebody planted this seed in my head saying, is it the work that you are all doing in social media that's making the brand cool, or was the brand just cool? And knowing that I always wanted to take an academic approach and be objective with how I thought about the work that we did, I couldn't answer that, because it's a possibility that the brand was just always cool and it was, in a downswing and it was going to rebound. And regardless of what we did, it might have had that resurgence. And I remember that it was almost like Inception, where when someone asked me that, I wanted to prove to myself whether or not it was the work and if there was a playbook that could be created, or if it was actually just a byproduct of being at the right place at the right time in the right circumstance. So I had an opportunity to join a small company called Stance, which is literally a company that just makes socks. And the funny thing about Stance is that small company in Orange County, I looked them up on Google because I was a big fan of their product, which was literally just socks. And I called them, and the person who picked up answered, and I asked them, hey, you don't know who I am, but I would love to go work at Stance for free if I can just have a small amount of equity. And the person said, we just set up our phones a week ago. We don't really have any infrastructure. So they just said, thank you, but goodbye. And they hung up. 6 months later, I was at a conference where the founder of Stance was also at, and I made it a point to seek him out and just shoot my shot and see if there was a chance that I could actually go work there. I had a 2-minute interaction with him, and I honestly thought I bombed it because he didn't seem very focused. He was checking his phone and he kind of ran off. And I was thinking to myself, man, that was such a missed opportunity. But sure enough, next day I get a phone call from an unknown number, and it's the founder of Stance. And he said, hey, sorry, I didn't have much time. I was in a little bit of emergency, but have been following your career for the last year and would love for you to join us at Stance and help lead marketing. And that's when I realized that if you just push forward and you really obviously persevere, you never know what doors might open. And I obviously accepted this opportunity at Stance. And sure enough, like clockwork, 2 months after I joined, our 3 biggest retail partners go bankrupt. So the company had to pivot from a wholesale model to a direct-to-consumer and open up their own retail stores, as well as develop their own presence on e-commerce. So going through that crisis also let me see firsthand how important your business strategy is and what you need to do to thrive given certain constraints that are out in the marketplace. We were able to do things like launch a collaboration with Star Wars and Disney. We also were the official sock of the NBA, also MLB. We did a collaboration with Rihanna to launch women's socks. And over the 2 years, I was really able to work with a company that was generating 25 million in revenue and had 35 people, and grow it to about 100 million in revenue and 135 people. And seeing that growth also helped me realize that the playbook that we had at Taco Bell, it could work, and it could work in brands at different industries. So moving along through my career, I ended up hanging out at home one weekend, and I got another call from a number that I didn't recognize. And normally I don't pick up the phone, but for whatever reason this day, I decided to pick up the phone, and the person on the other line says very straightforward, I asked 6 people in marketing who I should hire, and 5 out of the 6 said you. So who are you and what do you do? And I was incredibly offended because nobody in my mind picks up the phone and gets treated that way. So I said, well, you called me, so who are you and what do you do? And the person said, I'm so sorry. My name is Mark Matu. I'm the CMO of Samsung. And I remember thinking to myself, what an incredible opportunity to talk to the CMO of Samsung. So he asked me, what is your philosophy on brand and marketing? And we talked for about an hour, and sure enough, he said, this is an amazing conversation. You'll hear from me soon. And the next day, I get a call from HR, and they basically said, apparently you're our biggest priority. So what do you want to do? Where do you want to live? And what do you want to make? First lesson I learned in business is never answer those questions right away because it's not good negotiations. But I was young in my career, and I literally told them what I wanted to do, where I wanted to live, and what I wanted to make. And the HR person just said, done. And I remember I called my wife right away and I said, I think I have a new job. And she said, what do you mean you think you have a new job? Did you apply to something? I said, no, someone called me. This is what happened. And sure enough, 3 weeks later, I started at Samsung. And the first campaign that I worked on was the Samsung Galaxy Note 7. And I don't know if those of you remember years ago, but that was the phone that was catching on fire. So again, wherever I go, there's a big crisis. But again, it all roots back into the perception of the brand and how you can meaningfully build a brand through the power of being relevant in culture. So as we were going through this whole crisis and phones were catching on fire, you couldn't get on a plane without someone going on the speaker and saying, if you're the owner of a Samsung Galaxy Note 7, you have to exit the plane or turn in your phone for safekeeping. And I remember at the time, Mark jokingly said, I bet you regret coming to Samsung at this time. And I told him, no, this is going to be the most fun we could ever have, because we are going to get to rebuild the brand and do something truly innovative. And during that time, Mark and Jesse, a gentleman named Jay, who's doing media, and myself, and obviously lots of others, we made it our goal to really pivot and move from a product marketing organization to a brand marketing organization and highlight the reason why people should be excited about Samsung, not just for like the speeds and the specific functions of the phone. So after spending a couple years at Samsung and collaborating with brands like Kith and getting into the world of fashion and getting into sports and entertainment and doing integrations in ways that could bring the brand to life, my wife and I were actually looking to have our second child. And though I was living in LA, I was commuting to New York every week. So leaving on Monday, coming back Thursday, and then going to Korea every other month. And so I told Mark, this wasn't sustainable for me to travel that much. And as much fun as we were having in rebuilding this brand, he jokingly said, well, you told us where you wanted to live, but you never said where you wanted to work. So that's kind of your fault. And I acknowledged that I didn't tell him where I wanted to work, but only where I wanted to live. And ultimately decided to transition off and move my work to a few other folks on the team at Samsung. So after that time, I took about a month off and started getting ready for our second child. And I was able to meet a wonderful leader named Kelly Campbell, who at the time was the CMO of Hulu and eventually became the president of Hulu and is now the president of Peacock. And she'd asked me in a casual conversation, what work inspires me. And I talked to her about navigating through crises and the different work that people are able to do in those moments. And she asked me, what was the last commercial I remember from Hulu? And at the time, I honestly couldn't remember anything other than the Alec Baldwin spot from years ago where he's an alien and he wants you to watch Hulu so it rots your brain and they can eat your brain and all that stuff. And she was definitely offended because she said that ad is almost 10 years old. That's the only thing you remember from Hulu. And at the time I told her, yeah, I don't think anything else has been as relevant. And then she then said, well, we need to change that. So she invited me to join the Hulu team, lead brand and culture, and drive relevance for the company. And during that period, we had a lot of fun working on campaigns like Better Ruins Everything and Hulu Has Live Sports, and doing things like the world record egg, which was something that was done on Instagram, and really bringing the Hulu brand to life in a meaningful way. And during that time, again, fun crises was Disney was announced to acquire Fox, and included in that deal was Hulu. And so there was a lot of uncertainty on what was going to happen to Hulu and the Hulu brand. And at the time, our CEO kind of pulled me aside and said, have you ever been acquired before? And I told him, no, I've always been on the other side, like at Samsung, where we were acquiring other brands. He said, well, in this situation, you will likely have a few months, call it a year and a half, to really develop and distinguish the Hulu brand from the Disney brand. And if you do a good job, it'll still be independent. And if you don't do a good job, it'll be swallowed up and part of Disney overall, from a brand perspective. So we really sought out to build a brand that was distinct, edgy, and didn't feel like it could fit naturally within like the Disney umbrella, but stand alone and be something for like broader audiences, especially like adults. And we were pushing content like The Handmaid's Tale and Pen 15, and again, things that you wouldn't expect to see on Disney Plus. And sure enough, after the acquisition was finalized, we received word from the chairman of Disney Direct to Consumer and International at the time, Kevin, that he didn't want to consolidate it all. He felt that there were 3 independent products. There was Hulu, there was Disney Plus, and there was ESPN Plus. So we essentially accomplished the goal that we'd set out to do, which is to create a distinct and standalone brand. For some of you who know the history of TikTok, it was around that time that Kevin and I both went to go join TikTok. Kevin became CEO of the company, and I became the global head of marketing. And again, during that time, it was probably the most fun I've ever had in my career, because if you thrive in crisis, there was no bigger crisis than potentially getting banned and having the US government throw in an executive order on you, and navigating all the different things that were happening within the social landscape and the concerns about, what harm it could potentially do. And us kind of leaning on our mission and our core values of just trying to inspire creativity and bring joy. I would say it was an era that sort of defined my career in a new way of bringing, a brand to life and culture through activations like it starts on TikTok, and identifying a new model to completely change the way that people go to market. It used to take people 3 months to bring a campaign to life. And at TikTok, we engineered a way to essentially bring that timeline down to 72 hours. So for those of you who remember the TV campaign that featured a gentleman named Dogface that was longboarding down the street, drinking ocean spray and lip syncing Fleetwood Mac's Dreams, that was something that we were able to put together within a 72-hour time frame and get it from concept to air on national TV in such a quick, window that it allowed people to realize that things in culture really do start on TikTok. And it was sort of that innovation that kind of pushed me to think about different ways and different avenues to bring the brand to life outside of the app. And that included creating this thing called TikTok resumes, creating the first, NFTs for TikTok, which was one of the first NFTs across the social media platforms. And then also incubating an idea called TikTok kitchens, which essentially allowed people to find a viral trend on TikTok and order it through their favorite delivery app and have it delivered to them to their home. So as you can imagine, we were going through our 4th CEO at the time at TikTok, and the vision that I had for bringing relevance to the brand may not have aligned with what he wanted to do. And ultimately, I was let go for having all these innovative ideas. But what I love is that throughout my career, I've always done a couple things. I've stuck to my values of trying to do that initial thing of making brands cool and just not getting them sued. I've always tried to take an approach of learning as much as I could and taking every opportunity out there to try to learn, grow, and become a better marketer. Ultimately, my dream job is to go back to teach in a graduate program. And I think of all the places that I've been as being case studies and potential opportunities to teach a future generation of marketers what I learned firsthand and how to navigate through a crisis, whether it's in the food and beverage industry, whether it's in entertainment or consumer electronics or platforms or whatever it is, and really be able to distill that into an approach for everyone to take, because I don't think it doesn't take a creative genius to lead a marketing team. It just takes this desire to always learn and always understand how people behave, and always thinking about how you can find the big I always jokingly say that whenever there's a fire, you'll see me running towards it. And that's sort of been like the metaphor of my career, because it's in those moments that you can actually build something truly meaningful and impactful, and something that really cuts through and stands the test of time. And I've always been hopeful that regardless of what happens from a career perspective, if you can lead fearlessly and if you can do your work without any concern of quote unquote getting fired, you will always do what's best for you and your brand. And in my case, I still feel conviction that the things that we were doing were the right things to do. And being fired doesn't mean you're not good at what you do. It just means you might have a different philosophy or a different approach than the leadership there. And it's okay to push that edge, because if we don't have individuals that are pushing that edge, society and the creative community will kind of fall apart and become a very vanilla, bland, world. And I truly believe that in order for a generation to be inspired, we have to put out work that matters and put out work that could get you fired. And ultimately, if you can have a legacy that inspires people to push the limits of creativity, be innovative, and develop something new that could affect the masses in society for the better, then we all win. So that's a few of the learnings that I've had throughout my career. A little sneak peek into what I'm fascinated about these days is, as many people can imagine, the whole Web3, Metaverse, NFT space, which a lot of you are probably hearing about. Yes, there's a Cryptopunk behind me. I have a good amount of them. I really feel that it's allowing me an opportunity to once again learn something new and think about it in an innovative way. So in the same way that I thought about social media early on and developed my career around social, I think today's opportunity is really thinking about how the blockchain is allowing more transparency and an ability for a decentralization of revenue to really flow through to the creators that are adding value to those ecosystems. And that's kind of what I want to spend my time on over the next year or two, or however long it is, to just really dive deep into that space and understand the implications, because I see this being another amazing opportunity to learn, grow, and hopefully impact brands and help them be cool without getting them sued. So with that, I definitely wanted to leave some time for Q&A, but I really appreciate being able to share my story, and I hope that it's inspires some of you to really shoot your shot, get out there and try to live your dreams, and don't have any fear of failing or getting fired, because at the end of the day, those could be the best opportunities for you.
Thank you, Nick. I have some questions from the audience.
Of course.
So the first one is, so as you define your job, make brands cool, you certainly made yourself cool. Love how you turned every negative situation optimistic. Can you share how you keep that mentality and momentum in life and in work, and how you plan your career strategically to be uniquely competitive in the marketing world?
Is that more from a brand perspective or from a personal perspective?
I think that's more from a personal perspective.
Yeah, I think having a point of view would set people apart from a marketing perspective, because nothing is worse than being in a meeting where nobody shares a perspective and everybody just wants to follow whoever the highest ranking person is in the room. I think the success that I've had is not questioning things for the sake of questioning them, but really grounding them into insights that matter and trying to apply that to try to find a way for the brand to insert themselves in culture in a meaningful way. I also think that from a personal standpoint, especially in moments of crises, you might have this thought in your head of almost like sacrificing your beliefs or your values to accomplish something more quickly, or to get something done that you didn't think was possible. I think it's always possible to accomplish things and keep your values and your mission intact. And without getting any specifics, the biggest challenge that I've faced in my career has been seeing that there's an easy way out of things that jeopardize what you really believe in. And it's sometimes easy just to like lay down, or people say like, do you want to, fall on your sword for that? You hear that phrase a lot in corporate America. Like, that's not something you want to like die on your sword for. I tend to think that that's a little bit short-sighted, because there are certain things that you do want to ensure that you uphold, and your values need to be at the core of that. And if you can stick to that, then personally you will grow, you will thrive. And if the outcome of what you want to do isn't success and title or compensation, but just doing amazing work, I think, people typically win when they have that mentality.
Perfect, thank you. Another question we had was, that you talked a lot about your experience dealing with crisis. So what should I pay attention when I'm trying to learn from a crisis?
Yeah, it's not really what you should learn about, but more about the perspective. Because like when you're in the middle of a crisis, whether personal or professional, it's the biggest thing that matters to you right then. And you think about it all the time, like 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But if you actually take a step back and think about something that happened to you a year ago, or 3 years ago, or 5 years ago, the moments that you think about, even if they were a big deal at the time, it's very small. Like you might think about something that happened a year ago for 10 minutes, when you think about it, and then something 3 years ago, maybe 2 minutes, and then something 5 years ago, maybe like it's fleeting. You think about it for 15 seconds and then you move on to the next thing. People are very resilient. And no matter how big of a crisis is, you will always find a way to get through it. And if you do so, with the ability to like understand the perspective that you will have, it'll all kind of work itself out. And as long as you're doing what's best for the company, for the brand, for society, and for yourself, there's no way that people would fault you for what you did. It's only when you sacrifice your values and you do something selfishly, or you do something out of self-gain or things like that, that it becomes trickier. And there's always going to be things that'll distract you in life. And if you think about life as being a game, you don't want to always go on these side quests and like, do all these other ancillary things. Just focus on what you believe in and what you want to accomplish. Like for me, it's going to be teaching. Like I'm not going to deviate from this path to equip myself to be the best teacher that I can possibly be. And all these side quests, whether it's money or fame or power or title, those are just things that'll eventually distract you. But if you can focus on the things that matter, you will eventually, win, whether it's in a crisis or not.
Perfect, thank you. Makes sense. There are a lot of questions regarding NFTs and the role they will have like in social media and others. I don't know if you have, you can share like your perspective on them.
Yeah, I mean, NFTs in general, I think are just scratching the surfaces of what the blockchain can do. I think if you're asking about NFTs specifically, I would say that, having a way for people to express themselves, it matters. And in the same way that people aspire to have, a certain brand of clothing or a certain car or a certain watch or a certain blue check next to their profile to show that they're, verified, like you're going to eventually see people who want to have a digital version that represents themselves in an interesting way. That's like on the NFT side. I'll give you another case for the metaverse that I heard and I talked to someone about that I found very powerful. There are some societies in the world that are a little bit more oppressive than others. I'm not going to name any like specific countries, but like I talked to a female once when I was doing a lot of research on this, and she was from a country where like women aren't able to show themselves. They're covered and they aren't able to express themselves freely. And when I talked to her briefly about the metaverse, she told me something that was very profound. She said, I imagine a world where I can freely express myself. I can dance, I can show my face, I can do all these things that allow me to experience joy, be, free and be creative. Unfortunately, that world doesn't exist for me in the real world, but it can exist for me in the metaverse. And in doing, work across NFTs and the metaverse and all that stuff, we might be unlocking things that we don't realize are going to be so impactful to certain cultures and society in the future, but that might actually influence the way that people live and behave. And that's sort of the things that, inspire me personally to keep digging to figure out, what are the different applications that NFTs or blockchain or Web3 can do to provide people to be freer, more expressive, and creative.
Thank you. Moving on to other questions. There are a lot of students asking about any advice you might have from young professionals breaking into the market, like what makes students stand out? Yeah,
I've been asked this a bit throughout my career, and I'll say like whenever I talk to folks that are applying for like internships or entry-level jobs, it's always about how much passion they have for the company, because the experience is kind of table stakes. Nobody has that much experience when you're early on in your career. Everyone has a few internships potentially, or maybe just one. But at the end of the day, what a company is really looking for is someone that is highly passionate about that industry, that space, and specifically that company. So if you go into a interview as an intern or as an entry-level person, and you're not able to, like for example, at Taco Bell, the question they asked me was, what was my favorite Taco Bell item? If I didn't know that answer, it'd be clear that I shouldn't be working there. And again, we get to TikTok, fast forward there, we would ask interns, who's your favorite TikTok creator? And if you can't answer that, then obviously that they shouldn't necessarily work there, especially at an intern level or an entry level role. So I just say, like, express your passion, showcase, how authentic that passion is, tie stories to that with your experience and why you're a good fit for that specific role, whether it's finance or accounting or sales or marketing. If you can say, like, I'm passionate about X and Y in this company because of these reasons, and my experience has allowed me to even like further that passion through whatever it is, and that this opportunity will really, let me bring value. I think most people would look at that in a positive way and potentially bring you on.
Yes, thank you. That's great advice. And then we can move on to one last question. So they ask, Nick, I see that you have fought for most of the decisions you have made over the course of your career, and you mentioned being brave enough to give your opinion. But what do you do when your opinion is at odds with the higher levels of the team, and you clearly know they are going in the wrong direction?
That was a long one. Is that written down somewhere so I can just see it really fast?
Yes, I don't know if you can see the Q&A.
I see it at the end.
Yeah.
Okay. Clearly how they're going in the right direction. Oh, okay. So I'll start with the first one. So opinion is at odds with higher levels of the team, and you clearly know they're going in the wrong direction. That's okay. I don't presume to think that I'm always right. I think as I think about always growing and learning, you have to take in different opinions. And even when you're the head of marketing for a company, you shouldn't take the approach that you're at the head because you know it all, because nobody knows it all. What I always think about is, as the head of a department, your job is more similar to the captain of a cycling team, where you're behind at the back and you're just watching the team and making sure that they don't go too far left or too far right. But the people that are best fit for certain parts of the race, whether it's like an uphill moment or a lot of zigzags or like a downhill moment, you're putting them, in the front to lead the team, while you just make sure that everyone, you can see is following the same line. So that's sort of the analogy I use for leading people. I always try to equip the team and ensure that the best person for that specific project or role or campaign, they're kind of put at the spotlight, and I am in the back trying to make sure that they're able to do what they do. The other thing that I think about is there's no one way to accomplish what your goals are. And the more ways that you find, the better the company and the team will eventually be. And what I love thinking about is whenever I see my teams that are about to do something that I think in my gut is the wrong approach, I'll tell them what I think, but I let them do it because I find that you can learn a lot more from failing, especially if it's something that's inconsequential and not, destructive or disastrous for the company, than if you tell them, don't do that, and you don't show them why. So I actually really like when my teams have said, we're going to do this. And I'll say, well, make sure you think about these things, and it may not work out the way you want it to, but go ahead and do it. After they do it, they come back and they go, this makes so much more sense. And they don't do that same mistake again. And they apply that learning to future projects and campaigns. So I don't think there's ever, a wrong direction. I think there's just different approaches to the same problem. The last question of, do you choose to leave or do you stay with the team? Wait to see what happens. I would never leave a team because we have a difference of opinion or there's a different direction. I think the higher up you get, the more political it gets. And if you have very opposing philosophical views with the founder or the CEO, then you might want to make the choice to leave. But for the most part, I think that adversity and that tension and that constraint provides more creative opportunities and innovation than if everybody was swimming in the same direction at all times.
Thank you so much, Nick. It was really incredible to hear all your industry experience and very unique insights. Before we hand it over to Michael Diamond, our director, we're going to just highlight something that we believe you would be interested in hearing. We received great feedback from all the audience, and a comment stood out to us, which is to you, and it says, "Thank you, Nick. We believe that the way you manage chaos might make you the ultimate 22nd century CMO." So yeah, we've received great feedback, and we want to thank you for your time and for coming once again.
Of course, thank you.
Well, if you want me to pick up the thread, Christina, I'm happy to do so. Absolutely amazing day. And, you know, I really have to start where we finished. Nick, if you're still on, I cannot thank you enough for your honest and really deep personal insights. Your commitment to learn, grow, and become a better marketer, frankly, captures the essence of what we're trying to do here at NYU SPS in our programs in integrated marketing and communications. And I'm absolutely delighted to serve and support all of our students in that effort. Nick, you're going to make an awesome professor, and we would love for you to come teach at NYU SPS. So let's talk about that. If your paths bring you back to the East, we'd love to see you here. So I've been asked to do a little bit of the time machine, the internet time machine. We've spent about 5 hours together today, an absolutely awesome day, extraordinary, passionate, provocative, personally engaging, and I didn't even take a break for lunch, so it's really been a wonderful event. We started, if some of you can remember, with the 3 deans. Dean Kamath set us off with some visionary comments about the role of an applied professional education and the value of events like this IMA Global Summit. It's the kind of exchange which provides a unique opportunity for industry and academia to explore, in our case, the transformation of marketing and PR, which brought together our students, our professionals, our faculty. And then we shifted to Dean Ehrig, who pivoted us into this space of purpose and introduced Shell's emphasis on B2H and business to humans. And then we kicked off with Dean Aragon for Shell. So you've asked me to do what's almost unmanageable, unachievable, which is kind of summarize a day that started out that way and just got better and better. And as you know, marketers love their 3 C's and their 5 M's. And so I'm going to offer you 7 P's that I hope might capture all of what we spoke about today, at least playfully attempt to do so. So number 1 is purpose. And I think that's something we heard throughout. Dean Aragon kicked us off and talked about that acting authentically means it's about the good you aspire to do through the lens of your purpose. We heard about promises. We heard from Julie McHugh at Verizon about building trust through delivering on your promises. We heard about personification from a number of people, both how the brand personifies authenticity or purpose, and that the brand is the effect of everything you do in a company, a personification of the company, its products, and its people. We also heard about various paths to getting there, and Andisa very elegantly laid out 6 paths back to a brand's roots and its authenticity. And we heard a lot about pivoting in your career, pivoting back and forth in a company, and pivoting particularly between the qual and the quant, the plumbing and the poetry, and all of the various synthesis between data and insight that leads ultimately to action and impact. We heard about politics from Poshmark. Steve Young had a wonderful quote. He said, "The larger the org, the higher the chance of being inauthentic." And I think that's a very sobering but important point to realize, that all of this is done within the context of the politics of a company. And finally, we heard about preparation. And we heard from a number of speakers great advice for our students about learning to be agile, learning to be ambidextrous, learning to grow and evolve and use the tools as they become available. So nothing has actually given me greater pleasure. I said early on in the day, this is one of my absolute favorite days of the year. I can't wait for it to come around each year. I want to thank Clara and all of her colleagues. I'm sure she'll name them by name, but I want to thank Clara particularly for her leadership and my colleagues, Fedi and Mark Somnolay and Jennifer, who helped curate and moderate parts of the conversation. And certainly thank all of our speakers. The professional community of marketers and PR is an extension of what we do at the school. So many thanks, and back to you, Clara.
Thank you so much, Michael. So thank you everyone for attending our event today. I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. On behalf of the IMA board, I'd like to thank our speakers for the quality of insights delivered throughout the event today. Many students in the program told us they had never seen such an impressive lineup of panelists in one unique event, and today you truly proved them right. We would not have the lineup we had today without the endless support of our IMA Summit advisor, Federico Salviti. Federico, once again, you outperformed yourself this year, and we are so grateful for your dedication towards the IMA. We are super lucky to have you, and I hope next year's board will also have the privilege to work with you like we did. Michael Diamond, thank you for all your help and pertinent advices from the summit theme genesis to its execution. As a student organization, we appreciate your deep involvement in this event, and we're so happy to have you as our academic director. Thank you to Mark Somnolay and Jennifer Scott for stepping in today and delivering fluid and inspiring discussion to the students. We learned so much thanks to you. Thank you to the iCrossing team, especially Bogdan Simonenko, for accommodating all of our requests and delivering this state-of-the-art digital platform. Despite the complicated situation in Europe right now, we always felt that we could count on you and your talent, and this is truly invaluable. Thank you to the department, Robin, Lisa, Sue, Tabitha, David, in supporting us with our outreach efforts. It meant a lot. Thank you as well to Sue McNally and the Wasserman Center for putting together an amazing networking event right after the summit. So it starts at 2:30 p.m. We highly encourage you to join. And last but not least, thank you to all IMA board members, Christina, Maria, Sushant, Tina, Elizabeth, Tao, Tatiana, Alberto, Sident. Thank you for all your efforts and dedication throughout the planning process. I am so lucky to be working alongside such resilient and passionate individuals, and you should be proud of all the work you accomplished. IMA Summit 2022, that's a wrap. Don't forget to follow us on social media. Tina, if you can drop the links, and we'll see you next year. Thank you.